And Trump considered me in the summer of 2016 to be one of his final 4 vice presidential nominees. And they wanted to make an example out of me, and they completely lied about it. And my case ended up getting dismissed eventually.
Right.
But it took a couple of years. But they were willing to let me fry and go to jail for 25 years is what I was looking at.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Daniel Australian, and welcome to Australia the Media. Today, my guest, it's an honor to have him. He is Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, former National Security Advisor to President Trump, author of 8 bestsellers. One of them is called The Field of Fight, How We Can Win the Global War Against Radical Islam and Its Allies. I actually read that book. He has a new book that he's going to be presenting to us as well. General, thank you so much for your time again. It's an honor to have you.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, and appreciate it. I'm glad that we finally connected with you and your great audience. And I know you have an international audience, which is really wonderful, because I think that so many people that are out there, we were talking before we came on, this is really for your audience, that we were talking about liberty and the idea of freedom and these voices that we need out there. And yours is one of the more prominent ones in this sort of international, conversation that we're all trying to have right now. And you've been really, I think, I know that, your background and some of the things that you have written about, some of the things that you have spoken about. I mean, this rise of globalism is a very, very real threat to liberty. And I think that and one of the things that I do talk about quite a bit, and I have written about, is this notion of 5th generation warfare. Because as a military guy and as an intelligence expert, I always look at things as, we're in this kind of, very competitive environment, right? You have competing ideologies, whether it's Islamism, communism, imperialism, fascism, capitalism. You have these whole series of competing ideologies. And what people need to understand is that when you are, leading one of these large nation states, like China, as an example, with 1.6 billion people, and you're principally a communist country, you have a requirement for resources. And so you then you tie yourself to some of these like-minded people like-minded in the case of China, they're looking for groups and people that have power at the base of their decision making, right? And the need for even more power. Well, what comes with power is access to resources. And these are the kinds of things that I talk about in some cases in this book, 5th Generation Warfare, A Citizen's Guide to 5th Generation Warfare.
Can we see the cover? Can you show us the cover of the book, please? Yeah. There we go.
And it's a very small, it's a pocket size. It's made like a military manual. And then we designed it precisely to feel like a military manual, because this is warfare that we're involved in. And this is called The Citizen's Guide to 5th Generation Warfare. And it is, in fact, in Spanish. We've also written it in Spanish. And so people, so a larger contingent of people can actually get it, read it, and understand it, because as we go forward, and I know we were talking about the assault on President Trump in the great book that you wrote, the In the Shadows of the Presidency. So this assault on Donald Trump in the first term that he had, the first time that he was the president, essentially from the election of 2016 until he left the White House in 2021, that attack has not stopped yet. And there's this intellectual, spiritual, and certainly a physical battle that is going on in the United States of America for the soul of who we are as a citizenry, as a constitutional republic. We have people in charge of our country right now that don't believe in our Constitution, and they don't believe in the principles that our constitutional republic is about. They actually see that they want a much more federalist type of system where the federal government is in charge of all the decision making, and there's and the rule of law is slightly modified to take care of the elite class over the slave class. And that's kind of what globalism is all about. You know, the Klaus Schwabs of the world, Klaus Schwab, for those that don't know, I don't know how much you talk about him on your show.
We actually talk about him quite a lot. The ultra globalist. Yeah.
Yeah. So Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum. And, you know, Klaus Schwab wrote about the fourth industrial revolution, the Great Reset. And, you know, he's got the phrase, you know, you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy. And you have to ask yourself, what the hell does that mean? What does that mean when he says something like that? Because a guy like him running a forum that he runs, which is it's not just a glorified think tank. It is a body of people that have a belief system, an ideological ism, if you will, a belief in globalism. And globalism is the way to move this planet forward. And those that are in the way of globalism, and in the United States of America, this last election for the president of the United States was sort of the last bastion of defense, right? Or the last redoubt of defensive lines for, frankly, for liberty. Had Harris won or had Trump lost, you know, the first things that would have been happening is that Trump would have been put in prison for the rest of his life. His family would have been destroyed. His businesses would have been destroyed. All the people around him that stood up for him would have been destroyed. They were after Elon Musk in a big way. So those are just the tactical things that would have happened. The strategic things is the United States of America would have, immediately moved towards a much more stringent form of communism as a system of government in this country. Kamala Harris already talked about this, and I wrote about this about 2 months ago. I listed I only listed 10 of the things that she talked about, but some of them was to stack the Supreme Court. Most people don't know that the Constitution of the United States of America does not have any provisions for how many people sit on the United States Supreme Court. We have 9 now. That number has fluctuated over time, but you can add another 3. She talked about increasing the number of Supreme Court justices. She talked about making 2 more states, and the main reason for creating 2 more states was to create 4 more senators that could then be part of the legislative body to be able to promote their movement in the way that they wanted to go. So many other aspects, like to give emergency powers to like the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Commerce, the Department of State in some cases, and clearly the Department of Defense. Some of the emergency powers that were already given to them, that because Trump won, we're now going to have to wait and see if they actually implement some of those. But for example, the Department of Agriculture, you kind of say to yourself, well, Department of Agriculture, what? Well, if the Department of Agriculture can shut down or take control of all farming, okay? So there is no more farming done by the family farms that our country was so well known for. That's just one element. And now you talk about other elements like other industries in this country or the education system. So all of these things mattered to the globalist takeover of the United States of America. And that's what they had, that was their intent.
That was the plan. I want to ask you a question.
I'm not making this up.
General, a few days ago, you posted on your Twitter account, I follow you, you said that serving your country isn't just a duty, it's a calling. And the challenges faced by individuals who served in Donald Trump's first administration were profound, with many forced to weigh the costs of their service to the country. And then you said it's time to share our stories, the highs, the lows, and the truths of standing by one's principle. My question is, what were the consequences of standing by one's principles on you personally and professionally?
Yeah. Thank you for asking me that. The consequences of standing up for what you believe in, and basically telling the truth is they did really work to destroy my life and my family. They
made an example of you.
To make an example of me to generals, to other people that rise out of the military, to make an example to people that were community, like in our intelligence community leaders, because I ran one of the largest intel agencies in the world, to make examples out of people, because I was also a Democrat, right? So politically, I was a registered Democrat. And I say in the film, I have a film out, and people can go to flynnmovie.com. I say in the film that I didn't give a shit about politics. What I cared about was our country. And Trump considered me in the summer of 2016 to be one of his final 4 vice presidential nominees. And they wanted to make an example out of me, and they completely lied about it. And my case ended up getting dismissed eventually.
Right.
But it took a couple of years. But they were willing to let me fry and go to jail for 25 years is what I was looking at. Prison for 25 years for a crime that they committed against me. And I ended up fighting it, which thank God that I did. It was a very difficult decision. And my case ended up getting dismissed for exactly what I just said, because it was discovered that they committed the crime against me instead of the other way around. But what they also did in order to do that, they came after my family, and they I have sons. I have 9 brothers and sisters. My wife has 7 brothers and sisters. We have an extended family. I probably have 100 nieces and nephews out there, and so they attacked everybody. They really hurt my son, my oldest son, Michael. And by doing that, they found a weakness in me. And I say that very publicly, and I talk about it in the movie in quite detail. It's pretty interesting part of the movie, because it talks about this emotional event that we had to go through for me to make a decision to say I will plead guilty to the government because I don't want this to happen to my son, right? And it has to do with mental health issues, and because they knew that was an issue, and they attacked that. That's the evil that exists inside of elements of our government, and that evil still exists there, Daniel, and has to be excised out. That's why they so fear me, and that's why now they so fear people like Matt Gaetz, right? They don't want Matt Gaetz to go in to be the attorney general. They don't want any of these people to go in. These people that Trump is up against, this deep state bureaucracy, which is both in the government and they're outside the government. So these are not just people that are floating around in Washington, D.C. These are people that are actually outside the government as well. And they are very well funded. They're very well resourced. They have access to corporate media. They feel and they act as though they're untouchable, because frankly, nobody has been held accountable. So when Trump, and everybody's got to pray for Trump's survival, because I do believe, Daniel, that them trying to eliminate him and kill him, assassinate him, that is not off the table. I don't believe for a second that these people.
Well, the problem now they have is that if Trump is killed, you have Vance. I think now it's a bit too late. It would have been okay had it not been, before the elections. But with Trump winning the presidency, if now he's eliminated, they have Vance. I think Vance is, as far as they're concerned, a greater evil, a more dangerous. I want to ask something else. Speaking of, we now know, General Flynn, that the Dr. Evil who was orchestrating all these things against you was former President Barack Obama. Now, do you hold a personal grudge against this evil man for what he had done to you? And also, I think more importantly, to the irreparable damage he had tried to cause to the United States of America.
Yeah, so I'm one of these people, Daniel, that because if I lived with hate in my heart, I would never be able, I wouldn't be talking to you. I just couldn't get up every day. I think it would eat me alive. So that is not part of my persona. My persona, though, is one of a soldier. And I was born on an Army base. My father was a World War II, Korea War veteran. My entire family legacy, going back to my grandfathers who came over from Ireland, have always been military. So I have my military upbringing is very, very strong. So my thing is about fighting back and holding people accountable and making sure that those that have committed egregious acts against our government, that they have to be held accountable. I believe that Barack Obama, in the meeting of 5 January 2017 in the Oval Office, which had all the likely suspects. Biden was right there with them. Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Susan Rice, former National Security Advisor, and former Acting Attorney General Sally Yates. All of them were together one meeting, 5 January, and that's when they decided to go after me to get Donald Trump. So we have to get Flynn to get Trump. Almost verbatim, that's what was said. And these people committed, as far as I'm concerned, they conspired to commit treason against a duly elected president of the United States. And I do believe that Trump, he is going to have to take a look at this entirety of this Russiagate thing, which was all based on a lie, that they tried to destroy not just President Trump, but the presidency of the United States of America, and therefore the United States of America, and the very fabric that holds us together, which is the Constitution. So these people undermined all of that, and I do believe that they need to be held accountable. I don't hold a grudge. What I want is I want accountability.
Hillary Clinton, ironically, far more than Donald Trump, whom they call a fascist, has proven to be an exemplar of what can only be called neo-fascist ideology that is becoming increasingly extant in Washington. And so the Pentagon CIA Praetorian Guard that was formed around Clinton during the election campaign in 2016 was not only a harbinger of the militarized totalitarian state administered from Washington, it was also a signal that the United States was moving openly to a policy of this unabashed, unrestrained, permanent war against any foreign country it so deems. At what point did Donald Trump realize what he was up against? Because again, coming from the business world, Trump is not a politician. I mean, he's very good at what he does. Okay, he's a very talented politician, a very talented speaker, very dynamic. But again, one thing is being a businessman, another one, that's a different cup of tea. So at what point did he realize what he was getting himself into?